Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to our Tribe Transitions webinar series. My name is Heather Deer, and I am the Director of Parent and Family Programs here at William & Mary, and I'm excited to bring you your third webinar in our webinar series this summer. Today, we're talking all about student accessibility services. I know we have at least one deadline that's kind of on the horizon for families that they may be interested in, and I'm excited for the experts in student accessibility services to chat with us today about all of the support resources that they offer our William & Mary students and some of those deadlines that may be coming up for your family. So with that, I will turn it over to SAS. Please do keep in mind that any questions you submit, you can submit in the Q&A. We will monitor those throughout and at the end of our session today. So SAS, over to you.
Here we go. Okay. Perfect. Hello, everybody. So my name is Kara Fifield. I'm the Associate Dean and Director of Student Accessibility Services. And my coworker, MC, is here as well. MC, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Christina. I also go by MC. I'm the Associate Director here in Student Accessibility Services, and we're excited to be presenting to you all today.
So we're going to go ahead and talk about the services that we offer and how your student can connect with our office. So the best way to get a hold of us is our email, which is sas@wm.edu. We are located in the Sadler building on the main campus on the first floor. And our phone number is 757-221-2512. And we do work in the summer, so feel free to reach out to us as you have questions. So myself, I'm the Associate Dean and Director of Student Accessibility Services. I've been here since July. And then this is the team that I manage. So Mary Christine, who goes by MC Bird, is our Associate Director of SAS. And then we have Arena Scott, who is our Administrative Coordinator for Student Accessibility Services. So you will talk to one of the three of us as you have questions. So what do we do? So what we do is our main job is to provide accommodations for students with disabilities. If your student had an IEP, 504, or formal accommodations in high school, they would qualify for services here at William & Mary. We really encourage students to register with us as soon as possible because I know sometimes there's a stigma and students decide, oh, I'll just wait until the first test, or I'll wait until later, or I want to try it without accommodations. The best thing that we tell students is, just get it on paper, and they are fully in charge of those accommodations, so they get to decide when and how they use them. We also have a fully functioning testing center for our students, and we have pictures of that we'll show later. We have a beautiful student hangout space for community building. We offer resources and advocacy, and we support students with a variety of disabilities, both physical and invisible. The other thing that we do too is we do work with students with temporary accommodations. So that could be if there's a surgery coming up, a concussion, things like that. So for our permanent disabilities, there's a lot of disabilities of students that we serve. So our main category is learning disabilities such as dyscalculia, dysgraphia, processing disorders, things like that. And then also we serve a lot of students with ADHD. Mental health is our next bucket. So that could be PTSD, depression, anxiety, bipolar, things like that. So mental health is included under disability. We do chronic health conditions such as migraines, POTS, things that flare up for students. We work with students on the autism spectrum disorder or see themselves as neurodivergent. We work with students that have visual impairments that are either blind or low vision. And then we work with students with temporary accommodations as well, such as broken limbs, hand injuries, concussions, a lot of surgeries is what we get, or athletic injuries. And then we also work with students that are deaf and hard of hearing. So there's four main areas of accommodation support. We have academic accommodations, transportation accommodations, housing accommodations, and dining accommodations. So for academic, there's three different areas of support. We have test-taking support, note-taking support, and flexibility. For test-taking support, we offer more time on exams. We offer 50% more time or 100% more time, and we do have a reduced distraction space in our testing center. For note-taking support, we have a software called Glean, Glean, that we offer for students. So it really helps students to take notes by themselves and really work on that autonomy. And then we offer flexibility. So what that means is we offer flexibility for attendance and deadlines for students that have flare-ups of their condition. So our second area of support is our transportation services, whether a certain student needs parking support. And then our LMSS system is basically a golf cart system for helping students get to class on campus. And so that's something we offer for students with mobility impairments. For housing, we do partner with Res Life, and I know that this is the season to do that, so please reach out to us with questions about that. But for housing, we do work with Res Life on single rooms, air conditioning accommodations, bathroom accommodations, location requests for disability-related needs. And then we just took on dining this year, which I'm really excited about. So if your student has a food allergy, we do meal plan reductions. We work with dining to help them navigate the system so that way they know where to go. And then we also do meal plan exemptions if that's needed as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to MC, and she'll talk about how students can request accommodations.
Okay, so in the first step to begin working with our office is for your student to submit a request, an accommodation request into their Accommodate portal. So all William and Mary students will have access to this portal. So there's some instructions below. I'm not going to go through each one step by step. We're happy to have your student, reach out to us and send us an email, and we can send them those instructions. Or if you, excuse me, if you get a copy of this PowerPoint, you can just follow those steps there as well. But it should take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. The questions, on there are very well prompted, and asking your student, what their disability is, how they're impacted, what accommodations they've had in the past, what's necessary for them to, get rid of the barriers that they're experiencing. So it's really helps us gain too an understanding of where a student your student experiences challenges, and what accommodations will be the most appropriate for them. With that request, it does allow this student to submit medical documentation to support the request, and we do ask for that. So there is a section in there that they can upload. If you're experiencing any difficulty uploading, we can also have it emailed to us. So just keep that in mind. And some of the type of documentation that we'll be looking for is psychological, neurological, or educational evaluation reports, preferably within 5 years. But we do also have other documentation that a healthcare provider can fill out if those evaluations are not obtainable. So some of those are we specifically need a general provider form, and then there's other forms pertaining to the specific accommodation a student is looking for. So for example, there's students that who are requesting housing accommodations. We would ask that their provider fill out the housing addendum, and as it goes to with the meal plan exemptions, there's a specific form for that as well. So, and these are all listed on our website too. So I would encourage you and your student to take a look at everything on our website. Once we receive the request, we'll receive an email in our email saying, hey, a student has submitted the request for accommodations. And then our administrative coordinator will then reach out to your student to schedule something we call a welcome meeting with a member of our staff. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So what does a welcome meeting look like? We want the experience to be a positive one, obviously, with your student. We want to, kind of start building that relationship, making your student feel comfortable speaking to us and letting them know where, they're experiencing challenges. So we really want to keep it positive and really get to know them as a person. It'll also be a very interactive conversation with the student, just to discuss the background of, their disability, what their needs are, what accommodations they've had in the past that have been helpful. And then we would also discuss, what might be appropriate, moving forward. All decisions are on a case-by-case basis. I have a lot of, parents or students asking okay, well, what does someone with, say, ADHD get as an accommodation? So there's some that are, very general, a lot of students with ADHD will be approved for extra time on exams, but we treat everything on a case-by-case basis. So your student may be impacted differently than another student, say, with ADHD. So that's why we really like to keep this process interactive so that we can kind of get a feel for what each student is, experiencing, you know, challenges in, so that, and we're not just approving just everything we would just for a student with, say, ADHD. I forgot to mention also in my previous slide, but students sometimes, you know, until they get started with classes, don't necessarily know what they need for accommodations. So in their accommodate portal, there is also a section for adding supplemental accommodations. So I think that's really important for students to know ahead of time, that, you know, once they get started with their classes, it's not that they can't come back to us once they get started and are struggling. They can certainly come reach back out and say, hey, I didn't think I needed this accommodation earlier in the semester, but now I think I do. So that would be the place where that student, your student, can request some additional accommodations and meet with us again if necessary to kind of discuss what they're experiencing. So how can you as parents support your students? So our office, not only do we, you know, provide accommodations for students with disabilities, but we also strive to foster like independence and encourage students to have self-determination. So we want to help them build their self-advocacy skills. And this is done like through the coordination of accommodations and our services. So we really want to help your student develop these skills to be, you know, great advocates for themselves. So we encourage you as parents to empower your students to take, you know, the lead in communicating with our office. You're more than welcome, you know, if your student is okay with it, to sit in on a welcome meeting. We have several, you know, parents doing that, but we would like, you know, we're going to be directing a lot of our questions, or actually all of our questions, to your student and how they're impacted, what accommodations they've had in the past. So we really want to get to know your student, and it's fine if you have questions too, but we just encourage you to really empower them to communicate with us on their own. So as Kara had mentioned earlier, we offer academic accommodations, and one of them being is extra time on exams and other testing accommodations. So we do have a testing center here in our office. And on the screen here, there is a picture of our office, or our testing center, where we have little cubicles, desks and chairs set up for our students, so where they would come and take their exams. We have 22 spaces in this center. We also have 2 soundproof booths. Those are for students who have approved accommodations for a setting where they can't really have like any distractions they need. You know, for sensory things, it depends on what it is. I mean, a student will be approved specifically for that if the request is submitted, and we determine that that's appropriate accommodation. So it's a beautiful testing center. Our students really enjoy taking their exams here. They do find that, you know, we provide them a quiet space to take their exams. So we try to reduce like any external stimuli to the best of our ability. So it's just an overall great place for our students to come and test. And then the other picture here is our student hangout space that Kara had mentioned earlier. What we really want to do is we want to make sure that every student feels really welcome coming into our office. We want to get to know our students. We want our students to get to know one another. So we have this wonderful little hangout space for students to come in and just either hang out, like it's called, or they can come in, and we see a lot of students come in here and just study, do some of their homework. A lot of students will come in here before they take one of their exams. So it's just like a nice little space to build community with one another, and for us to get to know our students. So it's just a room right here with a couple chairs. We do have a desk. This furniture is fairly new, so we were really excited to get that. And I'm gonna pull it over to Kara again, and she's gonna discuss our Summer Connections program. I think one other important thing that I didn't mention too, which I probably should have earlier, there is a deadline, you know, for the Summer Connections program that Kara is going to discuss. But for students with requesting accommodations for housing, we do also have a deadline coming up at the end of this month to get those requests in, because we do have to let Residence Life know about what accommodations we're approving for students by a certain date. So I think taking a look at our website and Residence Life website is really important to make sure that all those deadlines are met, so that, you know, we can send that on over.
Hello, and so I think one thing that I wanted to talk about before I jump into the Summer Connections program is the biggest difference between a high school and college accommodation. So the biggest thing is we aren't modifying anything, so we can give students more time on things, more time on tests, more time on papers, more time on projects, but they still have to do the same amount of work that everyone else does. So they're not going to do like less pages, less work. We can offer them more time. So I think that that's the biggest change. And then also with any kind of like academic coaching that somebody needs or tutoring support, that all goes through our academic well-being office. And so that is something that is a separate office than ours. But luckily they're right across the hall. They're lovely to work with. So if students need tutoring or academic coaching, that goes through academic well-being. So moving on to our summer connection program. So this is our pilot program, our first year of doing this. So it really came out of a need of students feeling like they needed more time before orientation to really get used to campus. So we are putting together a program specifically for students with disabilities, and it's all kinds of disabilities. So it's specific to any kind of disability that a student has. It is July 22nd through July 26th. The cost of the program is $450. The fee includes room, food, and outings. I do want to mention if cost is a barrier to reach out to SAS directly, and we work with you on that. We don't want cost to be a barrier to a student. So what it is, it's a week-long experience for students with disabilities to prepare them for their time in the fall. The program provides an introduction to academic life, an acclimation to the campus, a chance to make social connections, learn advocacies, and practice essential college life skills. We have 5 mentees that are going to be mentoring these students. And so these mentors really came out of, they didn't have this experience when they came here, so they really want to pour into these students coming in. So the application is live. It's open through May 31st. We have up to 40 spaces. There's still plenty of space, so don't be stressed. And so if you have any questions about that, please let me know. And then once we have the application and the fee, you will get an acceptance letter there as well. And we do have our webpage as well that I want to show you if it works. There we go. So this is our website with our Summer Connections
I don't
program.
think it, sorry, I don't think
It's not showing.
No,
Okay, you see it now?
there it is. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. So this is our Summer Connections program page. So you can see what we're doing. Some of the highlights about the program is there are going to be 3 outings. We're going to take students to Yorktown Museum. We're taking them bowling one night, and we're taking them to the movies. They're also going to be able to hear presentations from people on campus, get tours of the library. So there's a lot of fun that's going to happen as well. And so I would just say any questions about that, feel free to check out our website and feel free to connect with us about this. So the deadline is the 31st. And like I said before, if cost is a factor, please reach out to us as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that portion, and we'll go ahead and answer the questions that we have in the Q&A.
Hey, thank you, MC and Kara. So I know something that I do want to kind of cover before we really get started is coming up in our summer webinar series schedule is going to be our residence life and room selection webinar. That's coming up the first week of June, I believe. I need to take a look at the calendar. But just want to let you all know, I do see some questions about room selection, how the process works, all of those things. So we will have a session with residence life that's coming up that can help us answer those more in depth. I also do always recommend that if you have specific questions about the room selection process, you can email myroom@wm.edu. Would recommend that your student be the one to send an email. They can include their name, their 9-3 number, and what specific concern that they have. They can email myroom@wm.edu to get a response from residence life. So just want to cover that one before we dig in, but I know that Kara has been hopping in and answering Q&As in the chat. If you do have a question that we haven't answered, please do go ahead and submit that now because we have plenty of time to get some questions answered. I do kind of want to start though, Kara, with one that wasn't submitted, but just in case anyone hopped on late, and kind of take us back to the beginning of why would a student engage with student accessibility services?
Of course. So the biggest thing is our role is to level the playing field for students with disabilities. And so with accommodations, we want them to have an equal opportunity with their disability so they're not at a disadvantage. So if, for example, they have ADHD, having more time on that test will allow them to show their knowledge instead of having to be in a cramped room with lots of other students. It really gives them the equal opportunity to get things done. And so that's really what we're here to do, is level the playing field through our accommodations and really support students with disabilities.
It looks like the question is, can you speak a little bit about health access for students with chronic medical needs? For those that are prone to becoming ill, have flare-ups, seizure disorders, how accessible is emergent evaluation, and what is the closest tertiary care hospital?
So I don't know how to answer like all of that. I mean, in terms of like the health access for students with chronic medical needs, I think depending on, what the situation and where it happens, whether it is severe flare-up, seizure, etc. If you're a student is around their roommate, obviously I hope that roommate can call for help as, needed, or depending on if it's, in a classroom, all that, I think, the professor would probably make sure that, whoever needs to be called is called. The closest hospital, and I could be wrong, but I know Riverside Doctors Hospital, which is literally less than 10 minutes away from campus. And that's where I find that students are typically taken for any kind of medical issue. So I don't know how to answer that first part. I mean, we're happy to find out more if that's something you'd like to know more about.
I think in general, I would say my guidance, and Kara and MC, you can correct me if I'm wrong, please do. I would say my guidance to families as they have questions for me about their students' specific health needs and their specific concerns is to schedule an appointment with SAS. If you're not sure that it's something that requires like an accommodation specifically, I think it's better to be moving through the process and then get to that initial meeting and conversation with someone in SAS to determine that maybe an accommodation isn't what you need, but we can refer you to appropriate resources in the community. But if that's something that you're curious about, I think it's better to ask the questions and to connect with us individually to ask some of those questions, and we can kind of guide you from there. I think my observations of the team in student accessibility services is they take a very personalized approach to supporting our students. And so no two students are going to have the exact same accommodations, the exact same approach to what works best for them, as students have very individualized needs and individualized concerns. And I think it would be my recommendation would be to go ahead and start the process, have those conversations with SAS. Maybe it ends up you don't need everything that you thought you may need, but just starting the process and getting connected is a really good first step. You think that's accurate, Kara?
It is. So I'll speak on documentation because that's one of the main questions I'm getting in the chat. So with documentation, we are very open. So it doesn't have to be, there's not like a time limit of like the last 3 years, the last 5 years. We are just looking for a diagnosis and recommendations from that provider. The only one that needs to be specific is for housing accommodations, because with housing accommodations, we need to know from the provider what is reasonable and what they're asking for. So that does need to be specific. But what I always tell parents is send us what you have. And then if we need more, we will let you know. And also like with documentation, whatever provider knows your student the best, have them fill it out, because it doesn't have to be specific. It's who knows what provider knows your student the best. So that's what I'd say on documentation. Every school does it differently, but we really focus more on the interactive process, that welcome meeting, than we do on documentation.
Question here that's a little logistically specific. If you have an accommodation that was just created as a new freshman, so for fall 2024, do you have to fill out the accommodation renewal request before the housing deadline or the course selection deadline? So are renewals applicable to this group if they're submitting an accommodation request for the first time?
I don't think that's so I guess it would be helpful for me to kind of like back up a little bit and talk about like what next steps look like after a welcome meeting. So after a welcome meeting, what we will do is then take a look at the documentation that your student has submitted again, and take, the conversation we have with your student into very like full consideration and determining what accommodations we're going to approve. So once they're approved for an accommodation, we will then send your student a letter to their William and Mary email, letting them know what they've been approved for. And separate emails can go out. So we'll send a separate email just for academic accommodations. And then we'll send a separate email to Residence Life with your student copied on that, letting them know what, they've been approved for. And so that Residence Life can, start working on those accommodations and finding where your student can choose to be placed. So that's just backing up a little bit in regards to that. But in terms of renewal, I don't think you have to do that for this specific selection, because we'll be sending those emails to, or Res Life will be receiving emails on what your student is approved for. There is, once they get started here, they do have to, renew their accommodations again, and we will send out emails letting them know when that is in Residence Life, we'll need those to send over to Residence Life at that time. So once students are approved for accommodations, they do have to do something called activate their accommodations. And that's what I'm referring to as saying like renewing. So the students, when they receive their approval from our office, there'll be instructions on how to do that in there. And that's for academic accommodations. Students will definitely need to activate for academic accommodations, but not specifically for housing this time around.
How often would you say, MC, are they renewing their accommodations? Is that once an academic year, or does it depend based on what kind of accommodation it is?
So I think it depends on what kind of accommodation it is. So for academic accommodations, we encourage students to renew it each semester, because once they're approved for accommodations, they don't necessarily have to utilize every accommodation that they're approved for. But if they want to, it's better for the professors to know ahead of time what those accommodations are. We will not be able to reach out to professors letting them know what your student is approved for until they do activate their accommodation. So we encourage our students at the beginning of every semester to activate. Once they have their schedule like fully down pat, and that they know for sure that they're not going to drop any classes or add any classes, so that we can then email their professors and say, hey, this is what your student is approved for. So I would say it at least once a semester, and then for housing too, but we're really good on sending out emails to students, letting them know, when these deadlines are and how to activate. And they're always welcome to stop in, and we're happy to show them, because I know for the first time it can be a little confusing. So we're happy to show them how to do that.
So I wanted to just jump in real quick. There was a really good question in the chat. So the question was that their student has a neuropsych eval that says that they need a single room, but the student's refusing to accept that. So I would say, first of all, if a student doesn't want the accommodation, there's nothing we can do. But the other part of the question, though, is what happens if they need it in the middle of the school year? And what I will tell you, it is very hard to get a single room in the school year, like almost impossible. So if this is something the student needs, this is the time to do it before the deadline. We can't guarantee anything after that.
Great point. One other question I saw that you answered in the chat, that I kind of wanted to approach in the larger group is, our son is concerned it may create a stigma among other students if he were to attend the Summer Connections program. Any suggestions on how to ease his concerns? And kind of larger, not specifically just to the Summer Connections program, but for families whose students may be concerned that there is a stigma associated with getting an accommodation, period. Any advice or guidance for those families, maybe navigating students who are pushing up against utilizing accommodations that they're approved for, and what the community at William and Mary is like?
I love that question. So thanks, Heather. So for us, our office, we are very excited to work with students. We are trying really hard to remove the stigma. That's a part of our name. So instead of being a disability office, we're an accessibility office. So that's a big change too. And there is a difference between high school and college, because in high school, you pretty much know which students go out to take exams or need extra support. So it's easy to see that. A lot of this that I tell people is this is student driven. So the students decide when and how they use their accommodations. And so with the testing center, there's going to be other people in there, but they're not necessarily in that same class. And so there is a lot of privacy there as well. And it doesn't go on their record. So the only people that see the neuropsych evals, the documentation, is our office. And so we're actively trying to remove stigma. It's not impossible, but professors want to work with your student with a disability. And so we really encourage students in that self-advocacy piece to really feel like they're going to get what they need and that there's not going to be a pushback. And in the event that's rare that there is a pushback, we're here to advocate as well. But we are warm, welcoming, wanting students to get what they need.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of closing slides, and then I will get us out of here. If there are any other questions for student accessibility services, oh, Looks like we spoke too soon. We had another question pop through in the chat. Okay, my daughter has diagnosed anxiety disorder and her therapist suggested possibly seeing if early move-in might be helpful. Is this possible? And if not, is just a tour of a real dorm possible?
So I know the tour is not possible. I know they have a lot of pictures online. There's a lot of pictures that I've seen with layouts, but there's not a chance for that. With an early move-in, we would have to do that as an accommodation. So that would be something to bring up in a welcome meeting with us, but we can make that on a case-by-case basis.
You. Okay, so I am gonna go ahead and close this out. If there are any additional questions that we haven't covered, because I know some are coming through, you can email sas@wm.edu. You can also email families@wm.edu, and I'm happy to direct those to the appropriate place. We want to make sure we get your questions answered, and I know that we do have some deadlines coming up, so please do send those our way. Just as a reminder, we do have lots more webinars coming up over the course of the summer. Residence life is always a hot topic, so I did just want to confirm for everyone who's on the call, I mentioned it earlier, June 11th at noon Eastern Standard Time is going to be when our residence life webinar is. That is scheduled intentionally so that it falls before some of those big room selection deadlines, because room selection really will kick off after they get their room selection time slot around June 18th. So June 11th is going to be about a week beforehand. And then we have all of the other webinars that are scheduled over the course of the summer. And then just another reminder that you can contact us anytime. Families, you have a dedicated email address, families@wm.edu, and you also have a dedicated phone line, 757-221-2508. We're going to be here all summer, and our goal is to help make this transition as seamless as possible for you. This session has been recorded. It will be uploaded in the next couple business days, and it will be available both on our webinar's homepage and also on our YouTube channel. If you want to know the moment this webinar hits that YouTube channel, you can always subscribe to that YouTube channel and be notified anytime that a new uploading is available, but you'll also get it in your email inbox as well. So thank you for spending some time with us today. Thank you, SAS, for teaching us all about the services and programs that your office hosts, and thank you for all that you do. I hope everyone has a wonderful day today. So I will go ahead and end us here. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.